Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this New Look SACE Management Conversations. It's so exciting to see so many familiar faces, and thank you for checking in right across South Australia and the Northern Territory and internationally. Welcome to all of you. It's fantastic for us after such a challenging year to be able to get back together again and be able to share with you today some of the directions for our strategic plan and also support you to share some ideas and working smaller groups to work through some of the operational issues through the SACE throughout this year. First of all, I'd just like to do our Acknowledgement of Country. This image here is of a painting that the SACE board commissioned from local artist Elizabeth Close. Some of you may know that the SACE board is currently working through its reconciliation action plan at the reflect stage, and as part of that process to support our staff internally, we commissioned this artwork to represent not only the SACE board's educational Aboriginal strategy, but also the SACE internal strategy through reconciliation. So we're very proud of this work and what it represents. All right, just taking you through the agenda for today. What we'd like to do is the first part of the session really will be an update on our Thrive projects, and I'd like to take you at a very high level through a series of projects that we're taking to ensure we shape education so that students thrive. And you'll hear from each of the project leads. And then what we'll do after a short break, send you into breakout rooms so you can focus on a range of operational issues so we ensure our current students thrive, and you can make selections into which group you want to go through. All right, the first thing I want to take you through is our education roadmap. The SACE board, as you've probably seen, has been committed to our new strategic plan in shaping education so that students thrive, and 6 of those projects that we're kicking off in order to be able to, for us to realise that vision, I'm going to take you through a high-level roadmap. So this roadmap is not a project plan. It's not an intention in terms of these are hard targets or key milestones that we're going to meet. It's just an indication, an idea of moving over the next 2 or 3 years of where the SACE board would like to go. However, it's going to be largely directed by working with stakeholders in terms of the pace of change and the direction of the change. So this is just really to support schools in getting a bit more clarity over the range of projects, what we're intending to work with you on over the next few years, and how through the SACE Change Network you can engage with these projects. So first of all, learner profile. Clearly the SACE board have made a commitment to be able to showcase the whole student, not only the importance of their deep discipline knowledge through their academic achievement, but also the capabilities they've developed over 3 years in the SACE, or indeed 13 years of education. So what we're hoping to do is we've started last year to discover how we're going to build that application or whether we're going to buy something off the shelf. And we've decided that the technology we've got internally through Schools Online and Students Online, that we're able to possibly build something within that and really enhance that application to serve the purpose of our learner profile. So we'll be working this year through the requirements and building and prototyping something and sharing that with you to make sure it's fit for purpose. And what we're aiming for is that by the end of 2022, we can release phase 1 for a small group of students. The second project then is clearly the capabilities project, and we're going to need some data to be able to be generated to be able to be sucked up into the learner profile. So the capability project, as Melissa will share with you in a little while, has started working on one capability and starting to develop a methodology of how we might warrant and evidence students' development of those capabilities. And then what we're looking for this year is to develop a suite of capabilities to complement the first one we've developed, personal enterprise, and then working with the community to validate and pilot those capabilities to a point where it's matching with the release of the learner profile, where teachers will be making judgments against the capabilities, and that data is being able to be sucked up into the learner profile. One of the other key projects is Aboriginal cultural competency. The SACE board has made a commitment to recognising significant learning on or about country in the SACE and providing students credit for that significant learning in their SACE. So this project is looking at how we might be able to capture that evidence of learning from Aboriginal students in South Australia and the Northern Territory, and how we might be able to give students credit for their SACE requirements around that. So it's quite a complex project, but we're going to clearly work with the Aboriginal community and the education community to find out the best way to approach that. But we're committed to, by the end of 2022, providing opportunities for students to have recognised in the SACE significant learning on or about country.
One or other projects is in the space of recognition and VET. We've started off very specifically looking at the VET recognition register and responding to some of the concerns and issues that have been raised historically about VET and the recognition register, to the point where we were able to launch a new VET recognition register early this year. But now this is moving beyond to looking at recognition more broadly in the SACE, and what does recognition mean in the SACE, and what makes the SACE the SACE. As you can understand, talking about Aboriginal recognition, how else can we broaden this concept of recognition that works so well in the SACE to include other things such as micro-credentialing, and really valuing and embracing that learning that's happening inside of school and outside of school. One of the key deliverables as part of the SACE Stage 2 review was also the revitalisation of the research project and personal learning plan. So we've started doing some discovery work, and now we're into the prototyping and piloting phase that we want to deliver this year. But we're committed to, by the beginning of next year, 2022, having new subjects available for teaching, and that'll be done under transition arrangements. So we'll continue to offer RPB and RPA next year, and schools who we know are probably teaching it this year will continue to be able to result next year. But we're hoping that we can run them parallel, that the new subjects will be available for teaching in 2022, but schools are also able to offer RPA, RPB next year as well. So we're working through the prototyping and piloting phase this year to a point where we can make it live for teaching next year. And the final project that rolls up our 6 strategic priorities on our roadmap is transfer of learning. We all know that the critical part of teaching is to make sure that students are learning, and part of that learning is to transfer that learning both within our discipline and then beyond our discipline, a really important skill for all our students. And so we're starting to think about, what does transfer look like? How can we use it to help design learning and assessment? And how can we formulate better assessment? We're starting to think about whether better assessment might be able to start looking at improving our exam structure and some of the questions in our exams. And so we're looking to perhaps potentially by the end of next year, looking at how we might improve the quality of our questions of our exams by looking at transfer of learning in our examinations. And Glenn will talk to you in a little more detail on that project. So very clearly, this is just a roadmap. It's not a project plan. Some of these things that you're seeing here and you might be screenshotting and want to share with the rest of the world is not something that we're committing to or we want you to hold us to. It's just a really indicative idea of the next 2 or 3 years to give you some sense of where we're hoping to go. But the pace of this and the direction of this will be largely guided by you. The only 2 things we're committing to are definitely the launch of the VET recognition register and the research project and PLP new subjects going live next year. They're 2 hard targets we're committing to, but the rest of it really is about working with you through today's process, but also through our engagements in the next few months. Now, the SACE board, in thinking about the suite of those projects, is really thinking about how schools and students respond to some of the policy decisions that the SACE board make. And we've probably learned from talking to you historically, the way that we have delivered policy and released policy hasn't always worked for the best. And what it might look like is we sit in the office, we develop some idea of a policy and a concept, and then we work with some key stakeholders. And then what we do after testing it with some people, we release it to the whole system right at the beginning. And then we work on supporting and providing professional learning and implementation to the community at the end of that process. And we know that we learn a lot from that early years and early time that we release that to the whole system. And some of those risks come out. So what we're hoping is to change that a little bit. We don't want the SACE board to release a big bang policy on the whole system. What we want to do is bring you along the journey from the very beginning. And the projects we're talking to you about right now are right at the very beginning. We've done some discovery work and we want to move into the prototyping and piloting phase before we go to full implementation. So what we're hoping to do is start to test some of our hunches. We've got some ideas, we're thinking about that. Here's a proposal, what do you think? And we'll do that with a small group of internal staff and critical friends and some subject matter experts. Once we've got some confidence there at a very early stage and really identified some big risks, then we'll move into the prototype phase. Then we'll be able to move it to some small scale groups, and we'll fine tune some of the things. We'll test some of our ideas again, and then we'll learn from you. The innovation and the change will come from our interactions with you. You'll be saying, well, I'm not sure if that quite works in my setting or in my school, or how might that work for a remote setting or an international setting? And we're going to then be able to really identify a whole lot more new risks and, of course, a whole lot more new innovation that we might not have considered at the beginning. Once we've got some of the assumptions and risks down pat, then we will then fine tune, adapt and pivot in terms of our ideas, and then we can move into a piloting phase, which we're doing that with a wider scale, more broader stakeholders. And then here we've got something pretty close to what we think it might look like, but we're still not committed to the final product. We're still learning from you. And then once we've gone through the piloting phase, we can be confident that a large majority of our community have taken us through the discovery, prototyping and piloting phase, and we're confident then we can move it into the preparing for the whole system and implement these projects. So we are really excited about working with you through this new responsive design and implementation process. Now, how are we going to do this? Well, it's really critical that we involve our stakeholders in everything we do. So it's important that we're communicating, and we've done that already through the Thrive Launchpad. We've seen the analytics, people are engaging with that information, and we've hopefully been able to support that idea that the narrative for Thrive is a vision that the SACE board holds, but it's one reflective of the education community in South Australia, but also nationally and internationally. And the critical part to this is our collaboration with you. Now, you might have seen, and hopefully you have engaged in the SACE Change Network. The SACE Change Network is something we released late last year through our website and through our individual comms, and also through the standard. And what it was doing is putting a call out to schools that are interested in working with us on some of these projects. Now, I know in some of the workshops we've done recently and engagements, some schools have still not seen this, and some of the information hasn't fed down to some of you or some of your leaders in the schools. So it's not too late. This is another opportunity for me to really identify and highlight the SACE Change Network to you, and to support you in understanding what it is and how you can get involved. And essentially what we're looking for is a representative network of teachers and school leaders that are willing to support us through prototyping and piloting some of these projects and testing some of the ideas we've got. It really takes our code of practice and our partnership to the next level, and saying that we are developing these ideas as a whole system, and the system we're collaboratively working together to get the best outcomes in terms of policy and practice for our students. The challenge for us is the SACE board does have a problem with its reputation as an educational authority, that once it releases an idea, that people think it's going to be policy, and people start to panic and people start to make knee-jerk reactions or decisions, and rumors fly. So just like I was talking with the previous slide, we really need your support, both whether you're part of the SACE Change Network or just participating today, that you understand the spirit that we're intending. That when we're working in the SACE Change Network, that we are genuinely just piloting and testing ideas and concepts. That none of these policies are going to be into practice unless there's an official policy decision and it becomes policy on our website. So once we're working in the discovery, piloting and prototyping phase, they're just ideas. They're things we're thinking about. And so what we want to change the conversation is that as an educational authority, we can still pitch ideas out there without worrying about people thinking that they're going to be policy. I'll give you a good example. Early thinking, we started thinking about what the research project might look like, and people started sharing ideas of what the external assessment in the RP could look like. And I don't know where it came from, but at the Research Project Teachers Association conference, everyone thought there was a rumor that there's going to be an exam for the research project. I'm sure some of you heard that, and everyone was panicking. Now, I don't know where it came from, whether it was an idea or not, but that's how it started to emerge. So what we want is to say, if you hear some ideas, if you're sharing some ideas, even if you're telling some colleagues today, can you please do so with the caveat that they're saying, the SACE board are thinking, the SACE board are trialing out what they're proposing, they've got an idea. Keep that caveat the whole time when you're working in the SACE Change Network or you're being informed of what we're doing. So they're the 6 projects that I talked about. This is the link on the website. If you haven't had a chance to get there yet, please, through the Thrive Launchpad, get in there and make sure that you sign up to these projects. Now, there are varying levels that you can sign up. You can say, I just want to be informed, to this is closely aligned to our strategic plan and I want to deep dive in that. We'll be contacting leaders in the next couple of weeks to say, these are the projects you're interested in. Just confirm your interest and the level of interest. Our understanding is that once you're committing to these projects, that it really does closely align to the work that you're doing. And that in terms of the resourcing and the support and the commitment, there's mutual benefits. The primary benefit is to the system. We've got a whole group of teachers right across the state and the country and even internationally working towards supporting students so they thrive, but it also bringing some learning back to your school for your own school site improvement plan. And so there's mutual benefits there, and that's how we hope to work. So if you haven't signed up, please make sure you have a go at signing up and thinking about the level of commitment that you can support to the SACE Change Network. If you can't commit to a project, please don't feel like you're missing out. When I talked about the system, that's generally what we believe, that this idea of a system is that saying different schools have different pain points and different priorities. We know some of you are thinking about how you're dealing with the inclusion of Year 7s. We know some of you have got some massive construction underway, and there's a whole lot of other priorities that you're dealing with that takes some of your resources away. So don't feel like you're missing out. We're committed to informing you regularly about the development and progress we're making, but we want to trust that the rest of the system is then providing the resources to support all of you, that we're building something together. And if you aren't able to contribute, you shouldn't fear or worry about that, knowing that someone else in the system is then providing a resource and we're building this together. That's really the vision that we've got. All right, enough from me. I'm going to hand over to some of my project teams to talk to you in a little more detail about the projects. What we'll do is we'll just share 3 projects, and then what we'll do is we'll have a short Q&A session. I'll jump back in and I'll ask any questions you might have about the SACE Change Network or each of the projects that they might be talking about. So either put them in the chat as they come or write them down, and I'll open the floor to the team as we go along. All right, I'm going to hand over to Peter, who's going to start first. Stealing my seat too.
Tag. Thank you very much, Hassan. Good afternoon, everyone. As Hassan pointed out, I am Peter Nielsen, and along with my colleagues that will be following, we form the SACE Board's Education Innovation Officers team. So I'll be talking a little bit this afternoon just about the learner profile design and development in phase 1 over this year and next year. And I'd like to start with a question. When applying for a job, have you ever had to refer to not only your knowledge and skills, but also your capabilities for using those knowledge and skills to the key capabilities of the role? I'm seeing a few nods there and yeses there. Yeah, because this is a core principle that is at work then behind the Learner Profile project. How do we create a mechanism that provides students with the agency to showcase not only their knowledge and skills, but their capability for using their knowledge and skills in different contexts and for different purposes? Welcome to Beyond ATAR, the Learner Profile project. Work that began in this space last year arrived at the conclusion that it'd be best to build the learner profile or e-portfolio or digital passport, etc., within the school's online platform, and then to project that to a learner profile landing page within Students Online. A not unhelpful metaphor for thinking about this is this idea of the old smartwatch and the ecosystem of apps collecting data on students' capabilities in their work. And the first app that's particularly useful here is this Compass app here. An app that guides and displays data on students' curricular and extracurricular activities and trajectories. And the second one is that app that we have in our smartwatches for collecting our goals and our achievements towards those goals. And this app then captures and displays data on students' goals and achievements. All through this process, some of the guiding questions that we've been focusing on and would encourage and invite you to share with us and to work on answering and responding to are these. How will a learner profile drive a zest for lifelong learning? How will it drive deep understanding and skillful action? How will it help to drive transfer of and belonging to and interconnected with, as well as agency in life? Now, a key consideration for all of this, of course, is about a better match. It's about creating a mechanism that enables students to get a better match between themselves and their post-SACE pathway, whether that is further education, whether that is employment, or whether that is some combination of that and or community work. And so it's got to have impact. It's got to be able to land with the end users an understanding of what the student has learnt and is able to do with what they've learnt, as well as be able to capture their attention. So how long has it got? Well, the research tells us we've got about 500 milliseconds, which means impact is critical, not unlike this fella here. Now, for me, Hugh Grant was always Wolverine. What I didn't have and didn't understand about Hugh Grant, of course, is that Hugh Jackman, sorry, is that he was also an accomplished Broadway actor, a singer and a dancer. I didn't have this 360-degree holistic view of Hugh Jackman. And this is the important part that we're trying to drive at with the learner profile. And that raises, of course, a particular risk. And I'd like to share with you then just a very brief 30-second video clip that illustrates this risk we're talking about. Well, the inevitable's happened. So that video is not loading and working for us here. So I'll do my best interpretation of this here. Put yourself into the zone where you've been in one of those lectures or you've been at a public speech. And the presenter is talking like this with no extra linguistic devices, no intonation, no change in pace or anything. And you're spending your whole time trying to stay awake. Meerkats do that much better than I do, but I hope you're getting the point here that impact and rapid impact is critical. So where does this leave us now? At this point in time, we've had some early feedback from the SACE Change Network from our colleagues, and there's been two clusters of thoughts that are arising around what we need to be really focusing on a must-have and what we need to be careful of. And one of the must-haves around this idea is customization, that for different students to be able to present their unique constellations of knowledge, skills, and capabilities for different end purposes, there needs to be some degree of customization in here. And one of the risks was about duplication, that we need to be very careful not to create undue workflow or work demands on you and your colleagues, and that we need to be careful not to duplicate the sort of work that you may already be doing with e-portfolios or passports, etc. in your sites. So the starting point that we'd like to invite you to jump on board with this, if you haven't already done so, is to think about the Learner Profile project in 2021 and where we're launching off from, which is capabilities. So this focus on capabilities means that if you put your hand up for that project within the SACE Change Network or are thinking about it, we'd like to encourage you to do the same with Learner Profile and vice versa. That's because the Learner Profile project, as Hassan was alluding to, is going to piggyback onto the capabilities trial work, and it's going to use capabilities as a bit of a piggy bank, as it were, to extract data to put into the system, to test to see how it works, and to see if we're getting a better match for students with their post-SACE pathways. Of course, that's phase one. There are phases 2 and 3 where we'll go broader. We'll start to look at VET. We'll look at stackable VET and micro-credentials and badges and the sorts of outcomes that can come from being a single parent or from teaching a colleague how to use the fryer at McDonald's or coach of the netball team. So there's going to be a lot more work to continue on with after this. What would the process then look like? Well, it's not unlike sort of starting up a restaurant where in this day and age, we don't tend to go out for a full-fledged loan and start a restaurant from scratch here and expose ourselves to that level of risk. We'd like to invite you in through the SACE Change Network to a dinner party with us. They go something like this. You try out our recipes and ideas with us. We'll take on your feedback, take that to a food and wine festival there and get a broader understanding from a broader community. Put it into a food cart. Travel around with the food cart to find out what a broader range of stakeholders are thinking about the ideas and the concepts coming forth that we're amalgamating with your input. And then finally, we land on the beta 1 version of the learner profile and test that out to see how that works for students, for yourselves, and for end users. More specifically, that work is going to be responding to some certain questions that we really need your input and your partnership on, because this is a responsive and an iterative and an adaptive process. And the first stage is to consider, when we're building in schools online, this opportunity to provide data on capabilities, is it all teachers providing evidence and data on all capabilities? Next, what does that workflow look like? How does it get from the student to the teacher into schools online to perhaps onto some dashboard and then out through to this learner profile landing page and students online without duplicating work or creating unnecessary work for you and your colleagues? What happens if multiple teachers are providing multiple pieces of data and multiple pieces of evidence are coming from students against the same capability? Who will aggregate that and on what basis, and how will that data be warranted? And finally, back to our friend Hugh Jackman. What data will be shared and how? So in summarising this work now that's heading forward over this year and next year with the Learner Profile Project, I'll leave you with this final screen here, which is just some emerging shots about how we might think about capabilities and presenting them on a landing page there, and melding that with the current record of achievement and what's on there. And down the bottom right-hand side, you might recognise a bit of an image there that came from Martin Westwell's early socialisation of this through the media last year. Thank you all very much. And I'd like to now hand over to Mel Rakiki.
Hi everyone. Yes, I'm Mel Rakiki, and I'm another one of the Education Innovation Project Officers here at the SACE board. And I've been a teacher for 22 years, and a parent, which means that I identify quite strongly with the work that we're working on here in this particular project on the capabilities. So look, Thrive and Entitlement, Hassan's taken you through it and Peter's mentioned it. And I know, and that's what we're working at this system level for our senior secondary students. But I know that as a group of schools here today, each and every one of your mission and vision statements kind of reflects what we're trying to do. It mirrors the SACE Thrive agenda. You're all focused on creating learning environments and opportunities for students to explore their full potential and experience success. So every single day, yourselves and your colleagues in your classrooms and outside of classrooms are creating opportunities for students to show the whole person, their whole range of potential and capabilities they have. And at this point in time, there's no recognition of that. And so that's where this project comes in. This project is really about developing a trustworthy platform that students can use to both develop or further develop and demonstrate evidence of multiple capabilities across contexts that's actually going to be valued for future pathways. And the focus here is not solely on university entry, it's also on work. So these capabilities that we are wanting to build together are really about the full scope of capabilities that students can develop and demonstrate and will be recognised and valued, that they can then use for future pathways, whether it be university or work and wherever that might be. So to summarise it, what we are intending to do is to decide on and design 4 to 6 capability assessment frameworks with you guys when you sign up to help us do this in the SACE, through the SACE Change Network. And these frameworks are developmental tools and instruments through which evidence of those behaviours can be made or can be seen. So if we just flip the slide now, Hassan, for me, thanks. Whoever's got control of the slides, thanks. All right, so look, we did have to start somewhere, obviously in this journey of exploration, and we did, as Hassan mentioned, work with the Melbourne University and Sandra Milligan's team at the Assessment Research Centre. We did use their methodology to design one framework that we are wanting to use as that lever for learning and testing. And that one framework that we use or that we developed is called Personal Enterprise. There's a little bit of political imperative tied to this, but it's also recognition that this framework contains capabilities that we think are important for the students' future. We use this as a lever for change. This sort of framework enabled us to build out using the ARC methodology. It enabled us to test some of these behaviours that we had put in there. And we've tested this a little bit. We've tested it internally with some critical friends outside. We've had a small validation of it just to see, is it usable and do people understand it, and is the methodology the right one to be using at this point in time. We also started a little bit of an exploration. So that's the first bit. The next little bit there that says establish relationship with universities, TAFE. We started exploring some other areas that might be important in the development of capabilities. We haven't actually decided on any future capabilities yet. It's something we want to do together, but we did explore areas, and part of exploring the areas was to talk to industry about what capabilities they thought were important. So we matched up what industry was saying they needed in terms of worker capability, and we matched that with all the research and global directions that we had looked into. We established a relationship with TAFE and the universities and SATAC towards a future capability entry pathway into university. So they value that proposition. So we're starting to work with them around what that might look like and what it might mean for students and schools and university. So if we flip to the next slide, if we can, what we are now working towards, and the reason we're asking you to sign up for the SACE Change Network to work with us towards this, is to actually work through this multifaceted, complex project as a team. We really want to bring together schools, industry and universities to work together to develop a recognition process for capabilities that's going to be valued. Now, we want to do this, and in doing this, we want to kind of unpack and work through all those challenges and considerations that we know might initially go with this exploration phase, like workload, like equity, like who warrants evidence, etc. All those things. And together, I think we can work through some of those things. There are two main projects. There is the co-construction of future capability assessment frameworks, where we want to really unpack and deconstruct what the capabilities we want our students to develop might be, and then what the behaviours associated with that are, and how we might go about recognising those. And the other project is about testing and validating the original lever, that personal enterprise framework, and taking that the whole way to determine whether this actually is a really valid and reliable instrument or assessment instrument for us. So I hope that you will join us on this journey. And obviously there's a lot more to this project than what we've been able to show you in 5 minutes, but hopefully once you join, we'll be able to unpack a lot of the work that we've done and a lot of work that we want to do. Thank you.
Thanks, Mel. I'm just going to hand over to Emma. Emma, are you there? Can you jump in?
Excellent, thank you. So my name's Emma Johnston. I'm one of the innovation officers working on the Aboriginal Education Project. The Aboriginal Education Project is a fledgling project, I guess, in comparison to learner profile and capabilities that you've just heard about, but it is something that I'm really passionate about and excited to share with you today. The SACE Aboriginal Education Strategy highlights the historic expectation that Aboriginal students need to conform with the Western education system in order to achieve educational success. And we understand that this approach is founded in outdated principles of assimilation and integration, and is for the most part still in effect today. The SACE Board Aboriginal Education Strategy articulates the complexity of these issues, and the spirit and intent of that document has laid a firm foundation to build upon. Renewal of Australian languages as a SACE subject and recognition of cultural learning through subjects such as integrated learning, community studies and Aboriginal studies are positive first steps, but there's still much work to do to enable Aboriginal students to thrive. As a leading accreditation authority, the SACE Board is in a unique and privileged position to lead change. So by partnering with Aboriginal communities and the broader education sector, we can help to realise the learning entitlement of all Aboriginal young people in South Australia by moving to a single inclusive system that recognises all learning. So in September 2020, 3 key recommendations were made and endorsed in principle by the SACE Board. The recommendations are that the SACE Board facilitates provisions for Aboriginal students to provide evidence of learning in language, that the SACE Board provides recognition of Aboriginal students learning on country, and that the SACE Board recognises the authority of Aboriginal language and cultural custodians to teach and assess Aboriginal languages and cultures. So these positions are echoed by the Sheargold Review and the South Australian Parliamentary Review into Indigenous languages, and drive the work that's now being done on the Aboriginal Education Project. So the Aboriginal Education Project incorporates two distinct streams. So one of those, the first of those is enabling learning in language, and the second is the recognition of cultural competencies, which is learning on or about country. So enabling learning in language will provide Aboriginal students who are fluent in an Australian language the option to complete SACE work in an Australian language, where and when they prefer. So it will provide Aboriginal students with the agency to elect to submit evidence of learning in their language. The recognition of cultural competence element of this project will embed true flexibility and inclusiveness within the SACE recognition process, with the intention of acknowledging the diversity of cultural learning that Aboriginal students participate in and the rich cultural knowledge they possess. Some key areas of consideration for us moving forward are about us understanding how we ensure stakeholder support from Aboriginal communities and the education community. Fundamental to the success of this program is ensuring the support of Aboriginal communities and leaders. We'll work alongside communities recognising and respecting their diversities and individual opinions around Aboriginal education. We'll also work closely and co-design with the education community through the SACE Change Network and partnerships. This work will support us to establish rigorous standards of accreditation and clear communication of purpose and understand how we can capture students' learning. We want to understand how we create a system that raises expectations and avoids soft bigotry, and most importantly, how we avoid creating a two-tiered system. Our success will require the co-creation of a standardised overarching framework that can be managed at scale across South Australia and the Northern Territory. It's expected the framework will require adaptability to meet local context and the needs of Aboriginal students in different schooling environments. So taking into consideration things such as metropolitan country schools, schools with low Aboriginal student enrolment, schools with majority Aboriginal student enrolment, students enrolled in schools on their country and students enrolled elsewhere. So as I said earlier on, we're very early in our innovation journey and we're still exploring how we might work together with our stakeholders on this project. However, we know that we have much to learn from you. And so we're asking that if you or your school are already doing work in this space, to tell us about it. We'd love to know about it. We know there are a lot of great things happening on the ground and that we can learn from everyone else's experience and expertise. If this is an area of interest, I would like to encourage you to get in touch and also register via the SACE Change Network.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Emma. Awesome. Thanks again for some of the questions coming through as well. We know a lot to sort of digest. So I'm going to run through some of the questions that are already in the chat. And if you haven't been able to see them, please just click on the chat icon on Zoom and you can have a look through some of them. But if you want to unmute or put your hand up or just call out a question, I'll just take a couple, allow us to move on. I know it's probably a lot to get through, but really this is just conceptual thinking, and the real work and progress is going to be made through our SACE Change Network work with you. So the first one, easy one, will the PowerPoint be available? Yes, definitely. We'll make that available for you to download after the last workshop. The second one, people picked up a really good question about whether we can tell people that there's going to be a new RP and PLP live for teaching in 2022. Again, the answer is yes. So the idea is the work you're doing on the SACE Change Network isn't going to be secret business between you and I. It's going to be about some things we can talk about. In fact, we want to socialise that as much as possible. We want you to say, did you know the SACE are considering recognising evidence in Aboriginal language? Isn't that exciting? And when they say, how are they going to do that? You can say, well, we don't know yet, but we're committed to doing it. And I think that's the important thing. And that's the sort of conversation we want to have. So in terms of the hard target, there'll definitely be some subjects live for teaching in 2022, which will be in the form of the Revitalised Research Project and PLP. But so they don't freak out, make sure you also tell them that RPA and RPB will continue to run under transition arrangements. We had some good questions come up about the capabilities, and they're great because they're the questions we're asking ourselves, and these are still early days. So first one was, are they the Australian curriculum or the SACE 7 capabilities? And the first thing is really, at the moment, we're not sure. We're still really emerging. So we want to give these true diligence in terms of exploring them from the ground up. So we know we've got those suite of capabilities there, but we know some of them aren't technically behaviours. So ethical thinking or ethical understanding isn't really a capability. It's the ability to think and understand ethics. So we might have to tweak them a little bit. And when Mel talked about personal enterprise, actually that was one that was emerged. It was so much fun. We started thinking about entrepreneurial thinking or entrepreneurial mindset. And in fact, once we developed the dimensions and the capability, the construct naturally emerges personal enterprise. So we want to be true to the process, and rather trying to label some capabilities to start from, we want to build them with you. And once we then go through some of the early work, we might emerge. They might be similar to the 7 capabilities that are existing. It might be different. What we are committing to probably is that literacy, numeracy, and digital capability probably aren't going to be some of those suites. We're seeing them more as skills rather than behaviours. So we've still got to think about what we do with them, and still strong commitment in the SACE to ensure students are literate and numerate and have some digital literacy, but they probably won't be in that suite of capabilities we're looking for. We are looking to evaluate them. If you mean evaluate, make professional judgments about them, definitely, rather than just recognise them. Hence, we're building those frameworks so teachers right across the system can make professional judgments about that. And someone asked a really good question about the validity and reliability of those judgments. And I think that's something we need to be able to explore with you. What would it look like? How can we make these judgments? How can we, look at what it might appear a very subjective process of professional judgment, come more objective and get to sort of convergence in terms of our understanding of those constructs. So I'm just looking down the chat. If you want to jump in, please do that. Otherwise, we'll move over to any other questions or the next section. Anybody got a question out there?
Hassan, there's a question about international schools and are they able to be involved in projects?
Yeah, thanks, Luke. Excellent question. Yes, definitely. So we already have, I think, 2 SACE international schools signed up on the SACE Change Network, and also some schools in the Northern Territory. So we're committed to our partnership with those schools, but also what we're committed to is the richness of our outcome by getting the diversity of experience right across the country and across the world. So please, if you're an international school and you haven't signed up yet, please, if you're interested and have some resources available to do that. All right, keep your questions going. Hold them on. I'm going to pass over to Adele that's going to talk to you about recognition, and I'll be back to you in about 15 minutes or so. Thanks, Adele.
Thanks, everyone. I know many of you, I've connected with many of you over a long period of time in the areas of VET and recognition and flexible subjects. And many of you will know my colleagues in that area as well, Louise Johnson and Roanne Berrick-Merry. Together, we'll be leading a program of work, particularly around ensuring that the SACE can develop a connected qualification. So a qualification that really puts students at the centre of their learning, that learning not only in the classroom, but beyond. And of course, there's many ways in which students can undertake really meaningful learning experiences, and ensuring that their SACE is connected for them as students, but also connected to community, further learning and industry. So we've started off, as Hassan mentioned right at the beginning, we've achieved a deliverable, if you like, of the publishing an updated VET recognition register. This went live at the beginning of the year, and perhaps some of you have already interacted with that, as well as having a bit of a new look and feel. There's some key things we've incorporated into that around the Foundation for Young Australians job clusters, because we know that the conversations that happen in schools around careers and pathways are becoming more and more complex. It's not only about what do you want to do, but it's about who do you want to be. And so in that way, incorporating those clusters, which or those job clusters which are new, can help aid the conversation there. So you'll start to see some of the more logo generated and visual generated features there that will help guide some of those discussions. The other part of the register, if we can flick through to the next one, is really around what the actual register itself looks like. a lot of this will be very familiar to a lot of you, similar search functionality and the lists of different qualifications at their stage and so on. But one of the things we have incorporated there, of course, is the flexible industry pathway, or FIPS identifier. We know that for many of you in schools at the moment, there's a lot of discussion around flexible industry pathways, which qualifications are funded, etc. So we've worked with the Department for Education to include that there. So that can be, again, another tool which adds to conversations you can have with schools, with students, and so you can be confident about whether it will be recognised in the SACE, etc. I guess if we go to the next slide, so we've building from that work we've done around VET, it's really around moving into the space of micro-credentials now. I'm sure many of you have heard this term. It particularly came up in the review of the Australian Qualifications Framework, and also in the review of senior secondary pathways, or the Sheargold review. What is a micro-credential and how does it enable learning for students? They're some of the key things we'll be looking at in this next phase of work. We're really interested to explore some new ways that enhance recognition opportunities for students so that they can really plan a connected SACE for themselves. And yeah, in that area, we will be looking at the stackable VET. So again, I guess associated with the flexible industry pathways strategy for the VET in schools policy. But also, what else does that mean? What else could a micro-credential in the SACE be? Could it actually be work placement? Could it be around some sort of ICT skills? What parts of our community learning policy already are a form of micro-credentialing, for example? So we want to build on and enhance all of those different opportunities. And moving forward, there's going to be some things that we'll be focusing on, particularly, as I mentioned, the valuable learning that students are doing, some key things around what makes the SACE itself. So many of you may know that recognition at the moment doesn't count in the compulsory stage 2 credits, except for VET. So is there a reason why that is, and explore and challenge that? So yeah, that's some really important questions there. So how can we enhance what systems and processes are needed? So yeah, a key body of work there, and yeah, we're looking forward to getting some of you involved in this work. So, and if you have any feedback on the VET recognition register as it is at the moment, or any ideas for micro-credentials, please get in touch. I'll hand back to you, Hassan.
Thank you, Adele. Yes, I'm sitting.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's absolutely fine. Thank you, Adele. So my name is Anne Verbeek, and I too am one of the Education Innovation Project officers here at the SACE board. And I'm going to be speaking to you. I've got to go to the slide. Around the revitalisation of the PLP and the RP. I was going to start with this terrific story. However, being in the Zoom space, it's much more tricky. So while I'd like to, give you that narrative, get you in the mood, we're going to move on into the nitty-gritty of what this project is all about. So the PLP and the RP remain SACE's flagship subjects because they continue to offer a flexible model that can be personalised and self-directed and place students at the centre of the learning. The rationale here is that we have both subjects anchored in the Thrive, and this goes to the heart of the purpose of the revitalisation of both these subjects. So why is this relevant 11 years after launching both the PLP and the RP? This is because we know the benefits of students being engaged in learning that relates to their individual experience. It's the relevance of an education with a real world application, and to enable students to balance how they generate knowledge and then apply it in their learning. So a decade on, we also recognise that both the PLP and the RP are yet to fully meet the needs of most students. So that said, we continue to acknowledge that many students have also relished in the PLP-RP journey and how this has been made possible by their teachers and a wider community. So we're looking to shift the focus, the key focus of the PLP from identifying employment pathways to ways in which students can explore who they want to be and discover their aspirations, whatever those aspirations might be, and understand how to apply them in the future. So for the RP, as you know, we all know from the 2018 SACE Stage 2 review, across the board, the subject is yet to provide scope for every student to exercise their agency or exhibit deep connected learning. So we're actively looking to address feedback from the review, such as how the RP has become highly refined and particular, so that it's almost unrecognizable from its original design. Now, to deliver on the learning entitlement, Thrive, we're considering how students will embark on an interconnected learning journey that begins with their PLP. Added to this, we're also looking at drawing on what's working and offer alternative approaches or versions within the RP to do this. So through the PLP, we're considering how students will begin to engage in an exploration of who they want to be, their aspirations, their interests, their passions. And then from this personal focus, students will be able to consider what might be missing, any gaps that they can see in what they want to learn that can't be accommodated in the general curriculum. So with this approach, students can continue to return to the PLP throughout their senior secondary journey in their later years of their secondary education, and potentially after. In December, we've discussed some key messages related to the revitalised PLP with this RP connection with some students, and they had also just completed both subjects. They all suggested that the opportunity to revisit the PLP in year 11 and 12 would be of great value to them. So, by explicitly linking the PLP with the RP means that we can extend, all of us, can extend the authenticity, the access and manageability of both subjects for every student, regardless of their varied pathways. So for the RP, we're discussing how the subject will be enhanced to enable students to develop skills and capabilities in ways that contribute to their well-being, create something of significance, and think about what connects them with others while they're learning about things that truly interest them. By resetting the RP more fully to be student identified, the subject could better support student self-regulation, metacognition, have students engage in an investigation that provokes their curiosity, have students develop learning solution strategies, engage in challenges that stimulate deep engagement, and an ability to demonstrate concepts before and after background knowledge has actually been attained. And get them to identify risks, plan for change, and establish habits related to reflection and analysis. So currently we have two separate subjects. Interestingly, some schools have already begun to link this to ignite a lifelong learner capability. Some schools are doing it in year 8, from year 8 to 12, others are doing it from year 9, others in year 10. By making this link between the two subjects, students will have a clearer understanding of the learning journey and make the connection between who they want to be with the what and the why they are undertaking a specific investigation, regardless if that's about an idea or a product or a process. So what we'd like, went too far, sorry about that. So what we would like to test and learn is that by designing and refining the PLP-RP narrative as a pathway to thrive, that we can deliver a clear message to students that they will be at the center of their learning and that they'll be able to consider their personal adventure in the PLP, and then narrow that down in the learning how to learn when they're not being taught in what they choose to do and engage in for their RP. And while we've started to consider some names for the enhanced RP, we're yet to nail it in a way that the name actually captures the purpose of the subject. And this is where we're genuinely keen to have you involved. We also recognise the need to redefine the assessment requirements through an exploration and analysis of student evidence. So we'd like to expand on the nature of evidence to support a shift to value and assess authentic learning as it happens, rather than a student's ability to reproduce that learning at a later date, for example, in a report. So for the enhanced RP, we foresee that this could be done in ways that make the subject more accessible and usable for all students. Again, this is something that we really want to test with you before settling on a final approach. And as you know, the SACE board's made a public commitment to make it easier for students to find relevant ways to connect with the RP through vocational and entrepreneurial aspirations that they might have. So the key drivers for the design of an entrepreneurial and vocational versions, for example, of this enhanced RP are to provide students with greater agency and reinforce that deeper connection with that PLP, as well as develop their critical thinking by understanding a personal investigation that's meaningful and authentic for all of them. For the entrepreneurial version, for example, this could be product driven, incorporate the development of project management skills, R&D perspectives, as well as being built on human-centered design principles. For the vocational, this could be work-related, an investigation that gives a student to make a choice regardless of their pathway in school, and we're keen to get your perspectives on this. So the key driver for the versions offered in the enhanced RP are to make the RP more accessible and enable students to genuinely access their learning entitlement. So as you realise, these are important considerations, and we look forward to working with you to bring them to fruition. Thank you. And now I'll hand over to my colleague, Glenn.
Thanks, Anne. Hi, everyone. My name's Glenn Arthur, and I'm the final of the Education Innovation Officers to talk to you today, I promise. I'm just going to run through, briefly give you a bit of background as to where the Transfer of Learning project has begun and where it's proceeding, and how we could connect in a valuable way and support both SACE and schools. So really the project teams, we started investigating a lot of the theory and research sitting around transfer. And this is something that's been an ambition of education since the inception of education itself. So there's over 100 years of research around the idea of transfer of learning. And even though we're sort of looking at it as a new term in a new way as part of our strategic plan, it's really been at the core and heart of learning forever in education. The idea that students can take learning from the context of the classroom and then hopefully eventually think about applying that in situations in other classes and ultimately in their lives beyond schooling. And we realised that this intention is a good intention. It'd be a really difficult thing to argue against an intention like this. But we also realise it's even more difficult to realise transfer, true transfer of learning in classrooms. It's not something that comes about necessarily naturally for students. Trust me, I've spent my entire career in classrooms with this exact ambition, trying to get students to shift away from rehearsal and recall and a lot of rote learning to actually internalize some of that understanding, take that surface learning, turn it into deeper understanding that they can actually convey and utilize in their assessments, in their activities, interactions with other students, with peers, with their school and beyond that. So we realized that the difficulty, we've realized that through our research into this. Really, the two things that we've tried to keep at the forefront of our thinking is that we don't want knowledge to be only considered as inert. All right, knowledge, we're looking for ways in which students can take that learning and in which learning processes can shift from being transactional, that it's not just simply retaining information for use within our assessments. But then we had to ask ourselves another really important question as an assessment authority. You know, I'm no longer a teacher in classroom, so many of us at the SACE board, we have to ask ourselves a question, well, what sort of role do we have as a curriculum and assessment authority in supporting you and your schools in this ambition? So what we've done to start to unpack this is have a look at our curricula and also our assessments, and we've drilled down on one group of assessments in particular. We've had a look at our external examinations. And I know there's always a few raised eyebrows when we start talking about exams and what we might propose to trial or alter in these examinations. But one thing I'd point out that really what we're looking at is not a deficit model of transfer of learning not being elicited in our exams. We're looking at a model where we're trying to identify and balance where this transfer of learning, where these opportunities occur in our examinations. So a couple of the activities that we've undertaken in the different transfer of learning teams is that we've started to actually develop a bit of a construct that allows us through 5 dimensions to actually unpack our exams, unpack the questions and see if these questions are requiring recall or they're pushing students a little bit further into what we would call near transfer, where they're taking their knowledge and applying it in similar but slightly different ways, or if our exams are actually, through some questions, pushing them to these far reaches of transfer where they're asked to use, apply, and even create new knowledge in really different and really quite unique contexts beyond the learned context. In doing so, what we've found is that there's variance out there, as you'd expect. Our exams have quite a number of opportunities for transfer. We also recognise that core of foundational knowledge is still really critical for students to show in exams. So we're not saying in any way that we want to abandon the recall that's required of that essential knowledge. What we've been able to do is have a look through the suite of exams from a range of subjects, you know, as varied as languages, English, mathematics, science. What we've noted is that transfer is apparent in our exams, but it's apparent to varying degrees and different types. We've used our focus on domain-specific transfer, the look at transferring knowledge within a subject as a way of hopefully supporting students for the future to be able to then transfer beyond subjects and then into their lives outside of school and into their futures. We sort of recognise the importance of making sure that our assessments drive the type of activities and learning that will support transfer in schools. So really we've got 3 intentions of the projects. One, to shift some emphasis, a little bit of emphasis away from recall and reproduction in examinations and highlight a bit more where some of that deeper thinking's occurring. 2, to actually find some greater balance across our examinations, for greater consistency in what we're asking of students and making the expectation of questions a little bit more transparent for them. And finally, seeing how we can support our colleagues out there in schools through professional learning to actually identify areas of transfer. So we've got a few intentions through the SACE Change Network as well. We're looking at ways in which we can explore and trial and learn from one another around the evidence for transfer and think about how that can support classroom practice. Thank you. I'll pass it back to Hassan if we have any questions.
Thanks, Glenn, and thanks everyone else. So if you've got your questions on transfer or the RP, please send them through. Just responding to a few earlier ones while you're thinking about those or putting them in the chat. Tanya did ask a couple of good questions about Aboriginal education. So the challenging one is who's going to assess that? And that's really a big challenge for us. And so when it's the language and learning, clearly we've got some experience with our language and culture subject where we're getting community experts to be able to support us in the moderation and quality assurance of those students' evidence of learning in language. But when it comes to the things that Emma talked about, significant learning on or about country and some of it might be quite sensitive, that clearly we don't want to engage and it's inappropriate to engage in the learning. And so therefore, as Tanya suggests, we might need to defer to the authority of the community or an elder or leader in the community to be able to verify and validate that learning. So that's something we need to explore. No decisions have been made, but you raise a good point, Tanya, that we're exploring as MRAs. We want to talk with the community. The other question you asked specifically about international students, now that's a good one, and there's a definitive no, they're not in scope for that project. So when we talk about international students currently residing overseas, the understanding is they are selecting to do an English subject, an English qualification, because they're hoping to go on to English speaking pathways or English speaking universities. And so therefore it wouldn't be open to them, but it's also out of scope for other students of different cultural backgrounds in South Australia, because we're acknowledging the need to support Aboriginal students. We're acknowledging the 200 years of oppression and marginalisation and, education data and health and wellbeing outcomes. And we're specifically targeting Aboriginal students in this first scope, and that any other cultures are out of scope. Nikki asked a good question about acknowledging that many schools undertake the RP in Year 11. So that's something clearly we are aware of and we're conscious of and we need to consider, but it's something we need to explore a little bit more about. We understand that many students do stage 2 subjects in Year 11, regardless of what subject it is, but we want to talk a little bit about that and what are the reasons why they're doing it in Year 11 and how can we respond to that, acknowledging that it is still stage 2 subject. So answers to be still explored. And says students accessing the enhanced RP generally implies it will not be compulsory for all students. Is that correct? No, it will continue to be an entitlement of every single student. After 2 reviews and 3 ministers, the board have continued to support this understanding that the PLP and the RP and the learning that's generated in that are the entitlement of every single student. So they'll continue to be a requirement that every single student needs to undertake. It's how students are evidencing that learning that we're trying to broaden a little bit and making it a little bit easier, particularly deal with the manageability, some of the formulaic nature, and some bias that might be in that process. All right. Anybody got any other questions? Burning ones? You can always contact us later. There'll be an evaluation come out later. We can pose some more questions. And of course, you always know where to find us. So I know it's a lot to take in, but if you're thinking about something, please feel free to shoot us an email or give us a call to be able to respond to that. But thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for taking all that on and for your support. I look forward to working with you in the SACE Change Network. I'm going to hand over to Luke, who's going to just talk you through the context of the new SACE management conversations and take you through the breakout room to the next sessions. Thanks, Luke.
Thanks, Hassan. Hi, everyone. Massive shout out and thanks to all presenters who presented so far today, and massive shout out to you as the participant. Do appreciate that it can be hard work, sitting and listening for an hour or so. So thank you for your time and your patience and your energy so far. So this year we've decided to change the format of the SACE managers conferences. So if you've done this before, then you would have had the pleasure of attending a workshop here at the SACE board. It might have gone for 2 or 3 hours or so, and the focus would have been pretty much, not always, but pretty much around information giving. So we'd give you updates about results from last year or things that are coming up this year, etc. Feedback that we've got was that perhaps wasn't the most effective way to use people's time, and therefore we've decided to experiment this year a little bit and sort of change track. So instead of having a 3-hour workshop face-to-face, we've got this structure. And we're supporting SACE coordinators, SACE managers in other ways. So on the website, you would have received an email, a swift communication it's called, a direct email to you. There was some information in the standard as well, where we've created what internally we're calling a toolkit on the website, but it's called Getting Started, and it's pretty much a one-stop shop for SACE coordinators to look at, okay, what's new? and what do I have to do, to do my job effectively. So it's got, quick links to all of the information that we would normally provide. A lot of that information was on the web anyway, but often, these things aren't easy to find. So we've decided to consolidate that for you. In addition, for new and emerging SACE coordinators, we had a 1 hour question and answer session a couple of weeks ago now to support, like I said, new and emerging SACE coordinators with any questions that they might have. So if you're still stuck, if you're still not unsure about the role, about what needs to happen, and those resources aren't cutting it for you, then please feel free to contact Ask SACE, and they'll be able to talk you through and support you through any operational questions, any and escalate things if need be, if it needs to go to someone with more education expertise. Today, we've spent an hour or so looking at the future. We're looking at Thrive, we're looking at learner profiles and capabilities and transfer and recognition and Aboriginal competencies, etc. What we want to do for the second part of this workshop is to have a bit of a deep dive into some areas that might be relevant to you as a SACE coordinator or a SACE manager, but also issues that we don't have all the answers for. So we want to know how you have gone about doing particular things, or we've got some crazy ideas that we think might have legs. And so we want to run those sort of things past you. And so that's the idea of these SACE conversations that we're about to start. I've set up 3 breakout rooms, which you should have an opportunity to self-select, select the one that you want to go into. At 3:15, there'll be 3 more sessions available. And again, you'll be able to self-select the workshop that you want to go into. So this session, there's 3, like I said, there's one on predicted results. There's one on flexibilities in the SACE, using case studies to talk about, how you manage students and support students and things like that. And a 3rd workshop on data. So in particular, how to interpret data, what story does that data, tell. So there are 3 options there. With technology, often things don't go to plan. I'm going to open the rooms in a minute. If you find that you can't self-select, then we'll go through a bit of a process. Hopefully Hassan is still in his chair and still able to do this. Well, he'll be able to put you in manually the session that you want to go into. After at 3:14 p.m, because the handover's at 3:15 or around then, I'll close the breakout rooms. I'll give you a minute sort of notice, and then we'll come back together, and then you'll be able to select another breakout room to go into. Okay, so hopefully this all makes sense. All right. Now, Hassan, can I stop sharing your screen? All right, look at that. Okay, have we got any questions before we get started on this bold new experiment that we're about to embark on? All right, so I've opened all the rooms. Can you guys see, can you guys choose?
So there are some people choosing, Luke. So if you haven't got access to that, just hold on like Luke said and we'll put you in.
The numbers are going down, which is a good sign, unless they're logging out altogether.
No, I can see people signing up into the rooms. It's working. If you can't get in,
the rooms are at the bottom of the list as well, so people might work that out.
Are they? Oh, they are too. So with Zoom, I think, depending on how recent your license is, so if you've got a sort of an oldish license, you may not have the functionality. So that means we might have to put you in manually.
if people want to put their name in the chat, and we can start putting some of those in if you can't get in, and me and Luke will put you in. Is that all right, Luke?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thanks everyone. Good luck. I'm going to join my room. G'day everybody. All right, just might wait a couple of minutes. Well, hopefully not that long.
Yeah, I'm here, Luke.
Okay. You gonna put your camera on, or?
Yeah, I'm going to try. Hold on. You see
Hey,
me?
here we go.
Yeah.
All right. So, Ines, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm the Manager of Information and Results at the SACE board. So I'm here to help Luke today with our presentation.
I thought I was helping you.
Yeah, you're helping me. No.
Yeah, g'day. Thanks for making time to join us today. This is one of the sessions where we don't have the answers. So we want to pick your brain about how we can best support teachers around advice around predicted results. So last year we had an issue last year, I don't know if you're aware of that, whereby predicted results became very important. And what we found was there was a bit of a gap around how we advise teachers around what type of evidence they need to or should take into account when determining their predicted result. Does that make any sense? In other words, don't just make stuff up. Okay, you got to base your result on something, and we probably should need to have more clearer information on the website about that advice. So what advice do we give, so that's what the aim of this session is going to be about. All right, so I'm going to try and share my screen. So I'm getting very nervous here because I'm doing a whole range of complicated things. Can you guys see that? What can you guys see? Ines, what can you see?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Our predicted results page doesn't look like our presentation. It's our presentation, but not full screen.
Okay. So what you're looking at here is a computer program, a software program called Mural. Now, what I can do is, this is like a collaborative tool, collaborative sharing tool. And if I share the, if I go to the chat, you guys should be able to follow the link and have access to it. Okay, working beautifully here. I should have rehearsed this. Okay, so essentially, our first question for you is, Ines?
Yeah, you have to enter your name for the session. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you access to this. And what you'll be able to do is enter in some feedback as we work our way through the presentation. Okay, so I'm going to start with welcome. If you're looking at my screen rather than your screen, this session is about predicted results. I'm Luke and we've got Ines. The first activity that we want to ask you is, what is your understanding about what a predicted result is? Why do teachers need to submit a predicted result? How do they determine the predicted result? And should students know their predicted result? So, Nicole, I'm going to pick on you because I know you. What's a predicted result?
The result that your teacher believes the student will receive for their exam under reasonable circumstances.
Yep. Okay. So, Eloise, I'm going to pick on you because I know you. So, why do teachers need to submit a predicted result?
In case there's any scenario where they can't sit that exam for some reason.
Okay. Yep. Hi, Janina. I noticed that you're on here. How do teachers determine the predicted result?
Hi, Luke. Did you say Gina?
Gina or Janina? Gina, how are you?
Anyway, that's all right. I'll double check. That's all right. I'm well, thank you, Luke.
Great. So how do teachers come up with this predicted result? Do they just make it up or?
Definitely not. No. So the other aspect that I consider is important from when I've taught Year 12 is also the ranking in the class.
Yep.
And so that ranking is really very important, and using similar assessment tools to the exam is one of your best indicators to get that ranking right.
Yep.
I don't know if that's the correct answer.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to try Janina. Should we tell the kids the predicted result?
Can you hear me, Luke?
I can. How you
Sorry, I just had an interruption. No,
Sorry.
we don't. No, we don't tell them the predicted result.
Why not?
Because it's not a fixed entity, a bit like external assessments as well. You are putting it in, it does need to be quality assured, and it's actually going to be moderated against the actual exam result.
Yep.
It also is a good idea not to tell them, because it may tempt them to perhaps not be present on the day of the exam.
Yeah.
And I guess quite from a SACE board perspective, you'd know that often students who do sit an exam who are unwell or feeling compromised, they tend to actually do better in the exam than their predicted exam result anyway.
Yeah. And there's often a, I think, what we found is there might be a misconception about, if they don't sit the exam, and what do they get, and do they get the predicted? And it seems to be, well, no, there's an actual few processes that go on. It's not just my teacher gave me a 92, so I should be getting a 92. There's other factors in play here. All right. So we have a look at this next section here about when the predicted result is used. All of those answers that we've just gone through are 100% correct. You guys, I think, have a pretty good idea about predicted results and what their purpose is. So we use it as part of the quality assurance of stage 2 examinations. And there's two scenarios here. There's an individual scenario where it happens for an individual student. And then there is a scenario that happens for a whole group. So the whole group was a scenario that we had last year. We're very, very hopeful that that never happens again. But we do have a process in place around that. So for individuals, it's a special provision, it's part of the special provisions policy. So it's kids who are, as it's written here, they're absent from an exam, and there's a few types of exams here. They have an acceptable reason for their absence. Okay, now the SACE board determines whether that's an acceptable reason or not. So it's an application process. And if that reason for the absence is acceptable, is approved, if that application is approved, then a derived result becomes the examination result. And as Janina has said before, that's pretty much a mod predicted type thing. So comparisons are made between actual results from the other members of that cohort or other members of that class against that student's predicted result, and a derived result occurs. Now, there might be a situation as well where a student is too ill to sit the exam, or they're doing the exam under sufferance. Again, it's an application process whereby the facts come in, sort of thing. Panel looks at it. It says either yes or no. If they say yes, then the derived result becomes the examination result when it's higher than the actual exam. So one scenario is where the kid doesn't sit at all. And so if that's approved, then it's mod predicted against the other kids. A student sits, but they're sitting under sufferance, and there's evidence, medical evidence to support that. In both situations, there is an application process. In that second scenario where they have sat the exam, they get the better of the mod predicted or their actual. Okay, and so remember, this is under special provisions policy. Information sheet 58 is going to give you more detail there. Now, there is a situation here. I don't know why that's gone over here. Why has that gone? It's about 5 times that's happened. I'm going to put it over there. No one touched that. All right. Now, for a group of students who are unable to sit an exam, we've developed a statistical process that uses the school assessment and the predicted mark to determine a derived result in that scenario. So similar to last year's situation where a whole cohort couldn't sit, then we needed to base it more on just a predicted result, or we couldn't do a moderated predicted result because we didn't have any actual results. So we had to use a different process. This process had been developed ahead of the awful scenario that we had last year, whereby we've used part of the school assessment and the predicted results to develop a derived result. And of course, you know, that's all quality assured and checked and integrity checked, etc. as a result. All right, we're going to get you to do something in a minute. Okay, I'm not sure about this mural. You try these things. Is it locked? All right. So essentially with the predicted result, the process is that, you know, the teacher bases their result on assessments that most closely match the exam. So what does that look like when you don't have an assessment type that actually is skills and applications task? The teacher then obviously provides that predicted result to the SACE board. Now, the predicted result is a percentage. So how are you going to align grades to a percentage? Okay, so you're working on performance standards throughout the year. You've got grades throughout the year. You've got assignments and investigations as your assessment type. You're doing, you know, you're doing non-tests as part of your summative. How do you then convert that into a percentage? And then if we have to use it, okay, because it's not automatic that we do use it because, you know, it's only in an emergency, we've developed a process to derive an examination result, either through the individual scenario or through the, you know, the whole group scenario, which we hope never happens again. All right. Man. All right. Can you guys still see what I'm saying?
Yep.
It says solo brainstorm. All right. I don't know about this mural in this. Okay. So what we're going to do now is do a bit of an activity. So if you haven't used this before, on the left-hand side, you can open up this one here called text and click on a style and color of sticky note that you want to use. And then once you've chosen the color that's for you, you can double click and then type straight in. When you're using this program, you can use your mouse to scroll in or scroll out, and then you're able to drag that sticky wherever you like. So really what we want is to ask your advice about what advice would you give teachers on how to determine a valid predicted result. So imagine that, you know, you're in the staff room or something like that, you're in a meeting, exams are coming up, and you've got to give advice to your teachers. What sort of advice would you be giving? I'm going to get you to spend about 15, 20 maybe on here. If you want to jump ahead, you can have a look at the other one, which is what can the SACE board do to better support teachers in predicting the result for a stage 2 exam. So what can we do to make it clearer, make it a bit more official, or what can we do? Now, if you don't want to grab these ones up here, like I said, you can just double click and it comes up. Any questions? Is anyone unable to access this?
I can't, Luke. I can just see you.
You can just see me.
Oh, you have to. You have to.
So did you follow
have to
the
go
link?
into the internet, yeah.
So there's a, in the chat, there's a, my screen's jumped back to just a.
Oh, yeah. Is it that link in the chat? Luke Nash to everyone. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So
click on that.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
If you click on the mural link,
yeah,
you should have access. You got to register, like you got to give yourself a name.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you should be able to get in. Nicole, are you able to access the mural?
Yeah. Thank you.
Luke, I think I could get into the room thing now, but now that I'm in there, I can't remember what it is I need to do.
If you just double click,
Yep.
you'd be able to create like a sticky note.
Oh,
So
yeah,
you can
yeah.
navigate around, you can zoom in, you can zoom out.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And what do you
So we've got 2 questions that we want your thoughts on. What advice do you give teachers when they come up with their predicted result?
Yep.
And secondly, what can SACE board do to better support our public messaging, really, about what advice the teachers should do? So think creatively.
Okay, I'll mute myself again. Thanks.
Kate, sorry, I've got your question here. Kate, did you find the link? It's way up in the chat at 2:26 p.m. So is everyone looking at their screen with their mural? No? Are you getting frustrated, Nicole? Okay. So you can resize these.
I think it's because I've got an old version of Zoom. Like I wasn't able to enter the chat room.
Oh, right, okay.
So I think that's probably my issue. I can't get into my own result sheet, like you said, and I can't do anything when I'm in there.
How do you move your notes so it sits in front?
I'll just sit back and listen to everyone else. How about that?
So Simone, oh, there you go. Some advice here, Nicole, was to open a new browser and paste the link. So Simone, you can resize, and I don't think you can put it in front of others. I think you just got to resize it. I think they're all at the same level. Okay, Kate, did you work yourself out? Did you able to get in?
No, I think mine might be a Zoom issue too, because I don't see anything.
Oh, okay. The link's in the chat. Can you access the chat?
I've got the group chat, but I can't see the one that's specific to the breakout room.
Oh.
I'm placed in the chat room. You can't see the chat. If you're placed in the breakout room, you can't see the breakout rooms chat. I can only see the whole group chat, so there's no link. Nothing.
Yeah,
I can see it now. Someone's just put it up there.
Yeah, someone's just put it up. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, mate.
All right, I'm in. Thank you.
Okay, just be mindful, of size and placement and things like that. So you can resize, just so it's sort of try to keep it neat and tidy if we can. Don't know, Ines, you got any thoughts? One thing I think which is something to think about is, subjects like maths and science, it's pretty straightforward, I guess, to come up with a predicted result, I presume, because there's actual assessment types that, the kids have been doing, and they've been doing it under test conditions throughout the year and things like that. There's subjects that don't have those as assessment types. So, your legal studies or your geography or tourism. So what sort of valid assessment should teachers be using, to make the predicted results for those subjects? Like, do we advise that you should be doing formative assessment and basing it on that? That's the tricky bit, I think. Should the advice be general or generic, or should it be subject by subject? I'm going to have to pick on people. Is my microphone on? Can you guys hear me? All right, I'm going to pick on you, Kelly. Hi, Kelly.
Hello.
Do you think it should be generic advice that we give, or should it be subject by subject?
I think there should be a little bit of generic advice so that everyone's, knows that it's an even playing field, but then it wouldn't hurt to have some specific subject advice as well. I think that would be quite important, especially when we're encouraged to make the most of the school assessment to represent the students' best work, but then to then do formative work. I do a lot of formative work, for example, in history, but to fit that in to get like a representative predicted grade. And also just, I guess, to encourage teachers to use more than just the mid-year exam results.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people
they do a mid-year
well
exam.
on that. Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah.
Do most of you run trial exams, mid-year exams? And is that the main thing you base your predicted result on?
I don't think you can. I think that that's just a snapshot, and quite often students do not as well in the mid-year exams because they're still developing those skills. So if you based it just on that, I think you'd be in trouble.
All right. How are we going? This is great.
So can I add something while everyone's typing?
Yeah.
I think one thing that is really important and sometimes is quite hard to manage is getting an assessment group that's big enough. So the SACE board recommends that anything under 10 should be combined with another school. That's not always heaps easy to facilitate, especially around subjects such as the languages, or as I found this year, EAL. So it would be good to have some guidance around that, because it's not mandated by the SACE board that you have to combine. But I think if teachers understood the importance of this, especially when there's a derived result at, how that would work. So if you, for example, had a student and there was one student in that class, and they hadn't combined, what would the impact of that be for that student? I think that would be a really important thing to highlight.
All right, so in the advice one,
I'd put that in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Connect hub groups, Simone, you reckon? What makes you say that? Simone?
I think just to make it easier for teachers to connect to people who want to be part of a shared experience where they can compare their data and work to get a predicted score that's more.
Sorry, Simone, you're very quiet.
That better?
A little bit better.
That's as high as I go. I'm in a room that's a bit weird and quiet, snuffling my voice away. I just think it might be helpful for teachers to connect to others that are interested in working a predicted score that is probably fairer and more representative of student achievement. Sometimes it's hard to find others who would be part of that kind of group.
Okay. All right, how are we going? A live calculator that teachers could use, different evidence to determine their score. Some guidance around what is acceptable evidence to use. Yeah, well, this is a big one. That's very detailed. Shave 5 to 8% off to see how the predicted percentage looks. Okay. Okay. So if you've done school assessment, which isn't under time conditions, is that still a valid assessment to use for your predicted? Or should that be discounted altogether? I'm going to pick on someone.
Before you pick on someone.
Oh, sorry, Kelly.
Sorry, Luke, I got to jump in here. No, that's not acceptable, I don't think. And I think especially in the maths subjects, they wouldn't find that acceptable. Timed conditions is really, really different to what a student chooses. When they've got time. That's just my opinion.
So is that really the guiding principle, if you like, that, if you've got evidence which isn't under time conditions, should that be discounted? Or should there be a scenario where it is valid to use it?
I think you have to have a mix. So for example, if you haven't done one formative essay test or SAT, how can you then predict how a student will go under 2-hour timed conditions? Yeah. Students tend to do better when they've had things drafted or they've had checklists where they know what they're going to be coming up against. That's not the case in the exam. And I think that runs the risk of having inflated results and kind of puts aside the purpose of having the 30% moderator sort of against that school assessment.
Yeah. Would most people agree with that?
Yes, I do.
What do you reckon, Anna? Hello, Anna.
Yes, I agree with Kelly. I think that as how kids perform on one particular day is very difficult to try and capture if you're doing a summative that's over a few weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But I guess, you know, how direct do you think we should be on our website around this?
Very.
Very direct, yeah.
Very direct?
Yeah.
Can someone put very direct in the advice over here? So, yeah, it's really, yeah, it can be a bit tricky. But some of this advice is really good. Ines, you got any thoughts on some of these comments? Ines, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? Sorry, I'm trying to,
yep.
I'm on my little laptop, so I'm trying to get from my Explorer with all my things that are open. Yeah, no, it's all good advice that we're getting there.
Yeah, we ran this session last week and we had very similar similar thoughts, you know, around, you know, it's really comes down to that timed under time conditions scenario to really get a good picture about, you know, that performing under, you know, under pressure and, you know, should it be seen, should it be unseen, you know, more than just a trial exam, that it's a whole range of evidence. But certainly the type of evidence where they can draft and redraft and things like that, that would be less relevant than obviously, you know, under the timed. All right. How are we going? Some very detailed comments here. All right. Make sure that predicted results reflect the ranking of the students. Why is the rankings important again?
So that would be used as part of the process of determining the defined result. Is that what you're calling it now? No, the derived result.
Derived result, yeah.
Carefully at what a student above and below. I suppose it's pretty uncommon that the 3 students would miss the examination. So that's just giving a more reliable starting point, I would imagine, for the SACE board.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ranking and the distance between the students as well is important.
Luke, is it correct to say, sorry, Luke, can I ask a question? Is it true that the rank order, you know, like how at moderation, we won't cross over, you know, you don't cross over grade boundaries. Is that the same for the derived? So if you didn't get it right, that would affect that.
Ines, do you want to answer that?
We try and maintain ranking as much as possible, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got some questions here, some hard-hitting questions. Just want to thank everyone again for their time today and trying to navigate Neural, which is can be challenging somewhat, but yeah, thank you for that. Part of this is we'll close the loop. So we're collecting, we had some stuff last Wednesday. Today we've got another session on Wednesday, and then we'll report back. So expect that, I'm not sure when, but we'll aim to do that as quick as we can. What have we got here? Being very direct in our advice. Yes, thank you very much. Alex wants us to share the process was used to moderate the predicted exam results for psychology last year. So, Ines, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll look at that, but it's a SACE board process that's quite statistical, but yeah, not sure whether that's something we'd be sharing with everyone at this point in time.
Yeah, it's a process where, because it happened to the whole group, where school assessment is part of the data that goes in, whereas if it was for an individual with like the scenarios where they're sick on the day or something like that, that's more a moderated predicted. So that's not using the school assessment, but for the psychology example, because it was a group, that's where some school assessment is in the mix as well. Did I say the right thing, Ines? Did I give away any state secrets or anything?
No, no.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we've got some pretty cool comments here. Have numerous opportunities throughout the year for students to show how they work in similar conditions. Only use assessments that resemble the external. Take into consideration all data available to you. Base predicted exam grades on similar tasks. Can be school assessment or formative. Assume the students will study prior to the final exam. That'd be good. Summative test averages and formative exam score can be helpful. Broad range of summative and formative tasks. Yeah, broad range, so depth and breadth. Fantastic. So the advice, what can we do? Some videos, yep. Help to connect teachers to form hub groups that could work to determine predicted scores, yep. Support teachers to form assessment groups with other schools. Does someone like to unpack that a little bit? Like normally that's not something that we SACE does. Is that a space that we should be playing in, do you think?
Luke, I think, sorry. I think
there you go.
I think that many years ago, the SACE board did get involved a bit more in that space, but it's something that they've moved away from. I am aware that a number of teachers in a number of schools find it very, very difficult to link up with another school. And so they often end up just going it alone. And so it is something that is a little bit of a matter, I think, that could be supported somehow. I don't know how, but even these days, being able to do it digitally, maybe being able to share some of the tasks and then look at that in a moderated type environment so that the teacher feels more comfortable about that. Often the actual combining of the groups is principal driven, is my experience. So sometimes, even though a teacher might want to do it with another teacher, the principal often says, sorry, our school just does not combine with another school, because they're worried about what could happen to their class data. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment on that.
Luke, can I jump in?
Yeah, go for it.
I would agree with those comments as well. We've made it a bit of a policy that if we've got a group under 5, we'll try and link up with another school. But it is very difficult sometimes to find schools that have got the time and also the numbers to connect, because it's really, really important that the standardisation occurs, so that, we know that the standards are the same. I think also it could help if the SACE board maybe provided, or, how when we do our subject checks to see, the numbers, there comes a little thing that says, at risk of not being able to be moderate. Perhaps the SACE board could flag that early on in the year and maybe send out connection emails to the SACE coordinators to say, this school's in your area, maybe you could connect, blah, blah, blah. Because it is very difficult, and especially when you have to create a hub. So this year we've got 3 schools working in a hub for Chinese background, and that still is only a combined group of about 5.
Yeah. So sort of, set up the date rather than, well, give the phone number, but not set up the sort of thing.
I like the idea of the alert coming through, because I think with a lot of new SACE coordinators, that sometimes is an area that they're not as familiar with. So sometimes that may not be flagged as quickly as it could be.
Yep. All right. We've got about 10 minutes.
Just quickly, Luke.
Yeah.
Just a simple thing that the SACE board's been helpful for me to help find assessment group partners is I ring them up and I say which other schools are offering this subject, and they've just given me maybe 3 or 4 to try, and if those didn't eventuate to anything, then I'd just ring back and get some more. Because half the time I was just asking all these schools and they say, oh no, we're not even offering that subject, and that was just a waste of time. So something simple like that has been good.
And you've just gone, Alex, you've just gone through the subject manager.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yep. Okay. All right.
We've got a fire alarm, sorry.
Okay. All right, so thanks again, everybody, for your time and energy and comments. Like I said, we're going to close the loop here. The last thing that we've got on this session is a thank you. So if you just scroll down to the bottom there, just some feedback to us about, was there anything useful here? Hopefully there was. How could we improve the session? Just some thoughts would be wonderful. Mural lessons. If you are interested in this, I don't get any kickbacks from the company or anything like that, but you can have a month free trial with Mural for that collaborative tool. The licensing is it's about $100 a year or something like that. So anyway, I find it useful for some of the things that I'd like to do. So there's other products as well. Thanks again. If you should have an option to leave the room if you so choose. If you go back to the main waiting area or the main session, I've got to create 3 more breakout rooms. So yeah, we'll probably get back into it in about 5 or 6 minutes time. So yeah, if you're leaving us, thank you. Okay, I reckon we're all back. Can you guys see me and hear me? Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, massive thanks to Kathleen, Tara, Monique. Monique, was Louise with you?
Yep, Louise is here.
Thanks, Louise, as well, for those sessions. So I'm going to set up another 3 options for you. So I'm going to do a similar thing. Appreciate that, it's pretty hard work at the moment. So we're thinking, because we have to put some people in manually, and it's not like that, but anyway, we've got to put people in manually. We might have a bit of a 5-minute break. So if it's 3:15, I'm going to set up the room. It's going to take me 1 minute to do that. And then we might get going at about 20 past. We'll say 22 past, which gives you a chance to, I don't know, do what you need to do and come back. All right, so bear with me. Okay. I don't think it took me a minute, but it might have. But I've created the 3 rooms. I'm going to open them in a minute. Now, there's a choice of 3. Like I said, one's around subject renewal, one's around the assessment schedule, and the other one is about managing online submission within your school. So if one of those appeals, then choose. If none appeal, then up to you what you want to do. So we're going to get going at about 22 past 3.
Can you just repeat them again?
Oh, sorry, what was that?
I'll pop them in the chat if you like, Luke.
Thank you.
So we've got online submission, subject renewal and
assessment schedule. Okay. Kirsty, you want to...
Just wondering if those people who are still in this room would like to decide on one of the 3 rooms so we can allocate you. So we have subject renewal, online submission, and assessment schedule.
Let's go from the top. So Ange, where would you like to go to? You can turn your mic off if you like as well. Ange Leopold. Ashish.
Yes.
Where would you like to go, Ashish?
Sorry, I have missed the options.
So it's subject renewal, assessment schedule, online submission.
The second one, please.
Yep, assessment schedule.
Thank you.
All right. Bambi Britain.
It's not there.
Benjamin Denning. B. Wright. Christina. Bambi, which session did you want to go to? I've just seen you sit down. I can't hear you though.
The online submissions one, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Clay Reid, which session?
Online submission, thank you.
No worries. Janina, which session?
All right. Okay, g'day everyone. We'll just might wait a minute or so just for everyone to join us. We had a few we had to put in manually, so. Now, hopefully you guys are familiar with the product called Mural. And if you're in the last session, I can hear you groaning. Oh, I should bring it up. All right. What do you reckon, what do you reckon, Ines? Should we make a start?
Yeah, we shall.
All right. Okay. Hi, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Luke Nash. I'm one of the managers here in the Curriculum and Assessment branch at the SACE board. My pleasure to welcome you to this session. My colleague Ines, who's the manager for results and
information.
Information.
Yeah, information, yeah.
So we're going to sort of support you guys through a bit of a presentation, a bit of a collaborative exercise to talk about the assessment schedule. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. All right, so Ines, can you see that?
Hold on. Yep. No,
and by that, I'm talking about a canvas, which has got SACE assessment calendar.
I can't see it.
I can't see it either.
No.
I tell you, I had one job. All right, let's try this one. How about now?
Now we can, yeah.
Now we can see it?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to share the link with you for this soon. But for now, I just want to go through some of the bibs and bobs about what we're going to be talking about. So we've done an introduction. I'm Luke. Ines is my colleague. Essentially, we're going to talk about potential changes or really getting your thoughts about what is the main impact if we did choose to change when results and assessment materials are submitted by schools. Okay, so when we talk about the assessment calendar, we're talking about timelines, okay? And so these timelines, they're set to ensure, like it says here, the timely and accurate delivery of results to students. So essentially term 4 is a logistical, I'm not going to say nightmare, because I don't know if it's a nightmare. It's a very, very intensive logistical time of year for everybody. And the purpose of that is to get the results out on time and make sure that those results are accurate, that you know the kids are getting what they should be getting.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a look at the current cycle, you're familiar, I think, with the timeline. So this is semester 2, 2021, and you notice all these green dates here. You know, you've got all these different dates for all these different things, and round 1 and round B and A and round 2 and orals and predicted results, all sorts of stuff. You know, there's a whole heap of different timelines that we require, both materials and results and other bits and pieces as well. And the reason why we staggered them is really, well, particularly around the actual work itself, is that we had to manage it getting in and out of the building. That, you know, the courier came at a particular time, and when we did the moderation on site, there was only so many rooms we could have available at that particular time, and we only had so much staff that could, you know, run the event, and so we had to stagger it. If you have a look at how it looks in a spreadsheet, you've got, pardon me, apologies for the blurriness of my snip here, but essentially there's 3 investigation rounds, and as you can see, they're staggered over term 4. This is September, this is October, you got your school holiday. So the start of term 4 is here. We do a whole chunk of investigation marking in that window between week 10, term 3, and the first couple of weeks, or the first week or so of term 4. And then we get some more subjects in around week 3, and then some more subjects after that, about a week after that. We have the 3 rounds of investigations. We also have 2 moderation rounds. So once the investigations are in, we mark them, that process is happening. And then for some subjects, there's a crossover between moderation and also some of the marking, which is also crossing over with some of the exams as well. So as you can see, it's very tight and congested during term 4. You've got the 2 moderation rounds, 3 investigation rounds, and you've got this examinations and examination marking event, which happens for basically a month, where we both sit the exams and we have the training and the actual marking of the exams itself. What we found last year in particular was that for lots of subjects, there was a crossover between the exam and examination marking and the moderation of that subject. And often we have the same people involved in both processes. So someone might be working, you know, all day at their school, and they're, you know, teaching psychology or something like that. And then we're asking them to come home and mark exams, okay, into the wee hours. And that's day after day after day after day. And then also once the exam marking's finished, they might do moderation after that. So it might be, you know, 2 or 3 weeks of fairly intensive work for these people. And really, is fatigue starting to set in? And does that fatigue, I guess, impact upon accuracy? That's a big concern for us, because although we're confident that, you know, people are looking after themselves and that they do their best effort and, you know, they are professionals, we have checks and balances, etc. Surely there could be a way for us to improve that, improve those working conditions, if you like, for these people. The other feature of this, of course, is the upload windows. So you notice this green color that goes with the investigations, and there's blue color which goes with the moderation, the school assessment. So we open the opportunity for people to submit results weeks out from when we actually get them. But we know that schools actually submit the results pretty much on the day that, you know, they are due. Okay, and so why is that? You know, I think we know why, you know, because, you know, you give people that amount of time, they take that amount of time. But the opportunity to actually drip feed the submission is there. I'm curious to know about why that's not taken up. Okay, so like I said before, you know, we're managing the ins and outs of the building. We've got all these, you know, crazy dates which are happening. Now we're uploading everything online. So all the, you know, school assessment materials, all the investigations, they're all submitted online now. Can we rethink some of that? So if we have a look at here, I'm going to get you to do an activity. So can changes to the assessment calendar create better outcomes for students? And how can we change the calendar to better support schools now that the submission of results and assessment materials are online? So do recognise that at 3:30 on a Monday afternoon in week 9, the energy may not be as crystal clear as it has been or as active as it could be. These are very, very hard questions. So I just want you to think about those. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share this link. So I'm going to share it with you as a visitor. So I'm going to copy it and I'm going to put it in the chat. This will give you, that'll be right. This will give you access. What am I doing here? Bear with me. No, that's not it. Where's the chat? There's the chat. Now, hopefully you guys are able to access this link. Ines, can you access the link in the chat?
Yep, yep, I can.
Okay. Ash, Kate, Sam, Carly, Shane, Anna, are you able to access it? So to use this program, you simply double click and you can create a sticky note. And then you can make the sticky note bigger, you can make it smaller, you can arrange them. You just type straight into it. If you go over to the left-hand side, you've got the navigator toolbar over here. You can choose different colors, you can choose different shapes, and you just type away. So we've got some people here. Don't have to put your name if you don't want to. Can be totally anonymous if you wish. But like I said, these questions are probably, I think, these are the ones we found the hardest last week.
Yep.
Because this is all about the educational narrative. This is all about, okay, you can think, well, it's going to make life easier for everyone if we, streamline and make it more efficient and stuff. But what's the point if it hasn't got any impact on students, any positive impact on students? So is there an education rationale to change when we collect stuff? We've got a crazy idea, which we're going to talk about in a sec, but, how can changes make it better for kids? So you can increase the size, you can decrease the size, you can drag them around. Just try to keep it, clean and tidy if you can, please. Yes, white bags are a collector's item now.
Yeah.
Okay. It is a little bit confusing right now, yep. Yeah, white bags yep. Just deleting some of these that are blank. Yeah, Yeah, so the result sheets are open, but yeah. Yep. Cool. All right. I might move on. Thank you for all those comments. They're fantastic. Like I said, it's really hard, I think, to think about, you know, how it could benefit students. Okay. So we have been burning the midnight oil and we've been thinking about a possible solution. Now, this is not, we haven't decided anything, okay? So as Hassan said at the start, at the very start, this is a crazy idea that we've got. We're asking you what you think, okay? So before we make any decision, we have to consult with you. We need to get your thoughts about what impact this is going to be, both on you as a school and the students. This is one thing that we've been, I guess, discussing in-house for about 6 months or so, and I'm just going to talk you through it. Okay, so the first feature is that instead of 3 rounds of investigations, we could have 2 rounds. And what we'll do is, well, you know, what we think we might do is have the majority of investigation subjects submitted in the first round. Okay, so the majority of investigations submitted round 1, which would be week 10, term 3, which gives us the school holidays in term 3 to do a fair chunk of heavy lifting to get, you know, all this investigations marked. It's going to reduce pressure on markers later down the track. Now, if a subject is by nature used to support kids to get their SACE, so things like community studies, research projects, you know, particularly if kids are, you know, finishing it off because they haven't quite done it. Things like workplace practices might be an example. There might be subjects that rely on all of the school assessment being completed first before you can do the external. I think business innovation is one of those. Those types of subjects would be in the second round. Okay, and as you can see here, it'd be starting around, what would that be? Week 1, week 2, week 3. Okay, so you'd have 2 rounds for investigations. You'd have one major one at the end of term 3. Gives you the school holidays to mark it. And then a second round starting week 3 for the rest. The other feature here is that there would still be 2 rounds of moderation, but we're thinking about moving the exam subjects, the school assessment for exam subjects before the kids do the exam. So we're assuming that the teaching and learning for exam subjects is pretty much done and dusted by the end of term 3, or at the very latest, week 2, term 3. Okay, so they've done
week 2 to term 4, Luke. Sorry.
Term 4, sorry. So all of the assessment, all the school assessment for physics, for biology, for maths, for accounting, that's all done, completed, and then it's just practice for the exam. So that's what we're assuming. If that's the case, then we could get the school assessment for those exam subjects in week 3, moderate them, only takes a week or so, and then they're done. And so that relieves some of the pressure on the marker and moderators. If they're doing both jobs, it relieves some of that pressure, some of that workload pressure, that wellbeing pressure. So hopefully if, you know, the marker moderator is fresher, you're going to get better outcomes in terms of the accuracy of the results or the validity of the result. I'm not saying that there's a problem now, but, you know, it goes to I think logically think that could be the case. So they're the two things that we're thinking of at the moment. So 2 rounds for investigations. Round 1 would be for the vast majority of them. Round 2 for investigations is for those that need to be there. And the school assessment for exam subjects moved from the end of the year to week 3, get it out of the way. Okay. What are your thoughts on this? What are the benefits of doing this? What are the risks? Okay, so do we want to have a chat first and open it up?
There's a few comments in the
thoughts?
chat. Sorry, look, there's a few comments in the chat.
Is there?
Yeah. So agreed, folios for exam subjects should be due before the exam, so students are just focusing on the exam was one. Would that enable students to spend 30% of their time preparing for 30% of their mark? And exam practice is term for week 1 to 3, but following up students on non-submitted tasks that is vital up-to-date current moderation date.
Yeah.
Is vital up-to-date, yeah.
Yeah.
Moderation date.
But if there is a timeline, yeah, I mean, we're just assuming here. So can we just spend a couple of minutes here again, just jotting down what you think some of the benefits are and some of the risks are if we've introduced these adjustments to our schedule. Are there any benefits or risks? Benefits to the school and students, and risks.
So there is a risk about getting through content for some subjects in the chat at the minute. It's great for kids, but crazy for teachers who are teaching and uploading for moderation at the same time. Currently, the moderation is done when classes aren't running.
So Simone, are you able to find where you need to go? It's in one consideration down the bottom of the canvas. I thought I locked all this stuff. Yeah, there's no intention to do any of this this year. Okay, so the dates that we've got published at the moment, we're committed to, but we're just starting a conversation really about, our future. Because we've got the opportunity of online submission, can we take advantage of that to do things a little bit differently? So I just might give you 2 or 3 minutes on that. And I don't think this will be the end of the conversation, will it, Ines? I think this is just the start, really.
Yeah.
people talked about, well, why don't you have certain, some subjects, I don't know which ones, I don't know, child studies or something, have that investigation due term too, So does it rely on the school assessment being completed in order to do that? Can that investigation be a certain thing in that certain time of year? Could there be a group of subjects like that? Rather than, a term for slog, really. Okay, the next, we've got two more activities before we thank you again for your time and energy this afternoon. If we navigate up to the top here, and many of you have started this and worked on this, we've got two questions that we're sort of wanting to get your thoughts around. And that's about, the school, the manageability within the school. So do our timelines drive behaviour? And there is a question there about fairness, and I don't know if it's valid or not. What do you think? Is it fair that some subjects allow for more teaching and learning because they get to submit their material later? And then the second one is managing the submission of results by the cut-off day. So do you give people to the absolute, wire to submit, or is there some sort of checks and balance process that you've got in place? The last activity is testing assumptions. So we've got some assumptions here that we want to test with you. So we think that schools need to know the timeline by the start of term 1. We think that teaching and learning in exam subjects is finished by week 2, term 4. We think that SACE changes of timelines will place more pressure on kids. We think that separating marking moderation reduces fatigue. We think that changing timelines will take away teaching and learning. We think that subjects that require the school assessment component completed prior to commencing the investigation need to be submitted later. And we think that 10 credit subjects need to be submitted later than round 1. Now, if you agree with that assumption, then place a tick. If you disagree, you think, nah, that's silly, then you can place this disagree. So you can actually write, what can we do here? If you go over to, the left-hand side, you've got some icons and you can choose your icon that you want. Doesn't matter if it's green or black or blue or whatever. So I might give you, I don't know, Ines, do you want to say anything?
No, yeah.
If we can keep it neat and tidy, that'd be good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm happy for you guys to tell us what you think, either through the questions on the left-hand side here or through the ticks and the crosses. If you want to put some more about the risks and the benefits, that'd be very much appreciated. There's a little, thank you is the last activity where, did you enjoy this session or did you find the session useful? How can we improve it? Maybe some training in mural. But yeah, it just gives us an idea that, okay, are we on the money with our assumptions, or, you know, how out of touch are we? You know. Got a thumbs down. That's impressive. But don't forget, there's icons over on the left-hand side, and you can choose the ones that you wish, just so it's clear whether you agree with the assumption or disagree with the assumption. Why is there a question mark? Okay, sorry, Shane. Okay, last job. If you finished your ticks and your crosses or your thumbs down or your question marks, if you finished telling us your thoughts about some of these questions about the schedule driving behaviour and managing submissions, the last job, much appreciated, is the thank you section right down the bottom. Please feel free, we don't know who you are, to talk about, you know, whether you think the session was useful and what in particular, and how the session could be improved. So, thank you. Yeah, mural is a bit clunky. Yeah. Any last thoughts in us?
No, thanks everyone for participating. It's been good.
Yeah, like I said, this isn't the end of the conversation. It's not like we've decided and we're just, you know, going through the motions or anything. We genuinely don't know what we're going to do. But yeah, there's going to be more to the conversation, I think, rather than just this session. And of course, there'll be plenty of lead-in time if, you know, we go down a particular path. Okay. Thanks again. If I've still got you, there's no further session after this one. So it's about 4 o'clock. Very, very busy people. Thanks again for your time and energy this afternoon. Bit heavy going, but hopefully you found it useful. It's been a pleasure having you in our breakout room. Thank you to Ines.
No, thanks, Luke.
And all the best. So feel free to leave the room if you wish, or leave the session. So hopefully we'll catch up soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Luke.